All right. Thank you for joining us, Real Estate World. This is David Clemens and How to Make Money with Hard Money. And today we have a special guest, my good friend, investor, confidant, Joe Faw. This will be a two-part podcast. So thanks for joining us today.
I appreciate it. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. This will be a fun one because, Joe and I, we get along really well. We have a lot in common. And I think that I'm always very fascinated by your mindset and your story. And today we're going to talk a little bit more about mindset, the life of an entrepreneur, some soft skills, negotiating, some real tangible things, which I think this will be a really valuable podcast for our audience today.
No, I'm excited. So we can start hammering away.
Yeah, man. So, tell the audience a little bit about yourself. I know everything about you, it seems like, but, Bay to Bay Properties, commercial general contractor. I mean, how did you get there? And maybe you could tell a little bit about your story.
Yeah, for sure. So somewhat the short story is, born and raised in Tampa, Florida, lived overseas a little bit, but kind of fast forward to college days. Started out at Florida State for a couple years, went over to University of San Diego to finish out my undergrad. And I would say at that time was kind of like when I really grew up, so to speak. Didn't have any friends over there, had to kind of make new friends, had to think through getting involved in different associations. So I got involved in the Student Builders Association and became president of that and kind of like recruiting other people, working with firms in the San Diego area to just kind of like stretch our thinking and be affiliated with building and development.
Yeah.
So after that, surfed the South Pacific for a while, 6 months, and then came back and got my MBA from University of Tampa. And my MBA at that time, a few years before that, they started an entrepreneurship program.
Yeah.
So it was what it was called, an MBA with an emphasis in entrepreneurship.
Okay.
So that's kind of what I did. Got through that in about 18, 20 months or so.
Yeah.
And we started the business Bay to Bay. Bay to Bay comes from, I lived in Mission Bay, San Diego. It's like a little bay area up there. Yeah. And then from Tampa Bay. So that's where the Bay to Bay kind of came from.
I knew that.
Yeah. So that was kind of funny. And then the properties, we were flipping houses a little bit when we were younger and in summers and my grandfather and that kind of thing. So that's where the properties came in. So anyway, so we got my entrepreneurship in there. Actually, yesterday, Bay to Bay just had its 20-year anniversary.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
man.
so June of 2003 is when we started.
That's incredible.
We were both, my business partner, Jerome, and I, we were both 23 years old at the time. We started the business kind of 6 months left of school.
Yep. Truth
is, a lot of people are like, oh, it's so interesting. You've been doing it for 20 years. The first few years are just full on luck. We didn't know what we were doing. So we just had like that hustler mentality. So I think like that kind of plays into like entrepreneurship in general, right? You just you gotta like want to fail and not be scared to fail and just do it.
It's a good time in your life too, being 23. I mean, can't make too many mistakes that can set you back that far, right?
And in fairness to that comment, I would say, we were very fortunate. I didn't have student debt. I didn't have any money, but I didn't have any student debt. So I was fortunate in that regard. Sure. So I know some other people, you might have to hustle through that and kind of manage that side of things as well. But you're right. I mean, I think my first year tax return was $7,200. The next year was like $26,000.
Straight profit.
Yeah. And so, but my point is you're surviving on $1,000 a month back in 2003. And
which is all you needed back then, right?
Really, right? And I remember my dad always saying, hey, you got your MBA and like, I'm pretty sure you can go get a job for at least like $60,000, $70,000 right out of school.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, let me just kind of keep working with Jerome and we'll figure it out. And we're doing a good job. So anyway, so that was like the hustler days in the first part of it.
It's funny because I think we both have similar stories as far as the first entrepreneurial journey, really bootstrapping the business to start with, and I think a lot of our audience can relate to that. A lot of our audience are contractors with running fix and flip crews or looking to build their real estate portfolio. I mean, we have mortgage brokers building their mortgage broker company. And so I think starting a company from nothing and not having venture capital coming in, that's how we started here at DKC Lending. We've self-funded as well. I think that forces you to find your way and forces you to save a penny when you can. And so if you could just, how did you guys start from a fix and flip standpoint? I mean, you guys were fixing, flipping, building a couple single family homes, right? How did you start that with no money?
So again, I mean, when I talk about like a hustler mentality, I mean, it's more just like a get it done, you don't accept no. I remember, the first house we built at some level, I'm not proud to say this, but I'm going to tell the truth, is from an entrepreneurial standpoint, I knew that the bank required us to have built 4 houses before they would let us.
Yeah.
So, I cold called the bank and I was just kind of like waiting till I got somebody on the phone that I thought would be receptive to maybe my story.
Yep.
I embellished a little bit on how much stuff that we had done to the bank, just to be able to say, hey, we've done 4 houses, even though they were remodels, not new construction.
Sure.
So again, there's that line in the sand that we want to make sure we're being moral and ethical. But I guess my point for that is just, you got to push it, right?
Yeah.
You got to push it as much as you can within the boundaries of.
We got to find the boundary, right?
Right. And so anyway, so that's the true story. That's how we were able to get a loan to build the first house.
Yeah.
And so you're right. We got to have that mentality and that mindset of like, you're saving for a rainy day. You're being super responsible. You're spending as little money as you possibly can. At the same time, you're taking risks on things that make sense. And again, depending on the industry and what you're doing, that means different things. The other thing I would say is that I think I think about you, and I think about Caleb, and I think about myself, and I think about Jerome. So in those early days, Jerome's my business partner.
Yep.
In those early days, I would really advise anybody that wants to have some type of entrepreneurial endeavor you've got to have the right mix of people. Because I'm just a big believer that, like, you and I sitting here today, I'm not good at everything. You could look at Beta Bay and you could say, what disciplines are in Beta Bay? And every business has a marketing, and we're in construction. So marketing, sales, business development, estimating, operations, finance, compliance, the HR side of things. So let's just say there's 4 or 5 buckets of discipline. And I would argue that's in every business.
Yep.
Joe Faw is not good at any of them, right? I'm good at maybe one of, when I say any of them, I'm not good at all of them, I meant.
Sure.
I'm good at maybe 1 or 2 of them, but I'm not the best. I'm not in the top 10% at all of them. And so I think it's we got to be vulnerable. We got to be humble and say what we are good at and what we're not. And then we need to find people or outsource, right?
Yeah.
To complement what's needed in order to be successful. So, I mean, if you look at DKC Lending and you say, all right, it's just David Clemens, my gut tells me you're not as good as if it was Caleb and Dela. And so that's why partnerships matter. That's why relationships matter. That's why finding the right people matter. I think at times you see entrepreneurs, they have this like, I can do everything attitude.
Yeah.
And I respect that at some level, but I would just challenge the person back to think, well, are you good at everything? And if you're not good at everything, which you're not, I just know you're not, right? You're not able to actually be the best company at everything. And so sometimes I think ego, or so as we parlay maybe into mindset, I think that mindset, I would just urge everybody to have a humble, vulnerable mindset. I like writing down what I'm not good at better than writing down what I am good at. I think the act of saying that out loud to other people, I think is humbling. And I think it shows gaps in kind of like the company, or, hey, I'm not good at finance. I'm not good at this. Okay, well, what are you going to do to solve that problem so the business can succeed?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think one of the first keys on the entrepreneurial journey is awareness, and having that awareness of your own skills and knowing what you are and are good at and what you're not good at and what you may need help on, because that goes to ego, like you said. And if you think you're good at everything, you're probably lying to yourself a little bit somewhere along the line. But I think awareness of what are my skills and what do I need to partner with to improve the company. And so, you mentioned Caleb. He's a perfect example of that. I mean, we're yin and yang. I'm more back end. He's more front end. He's the sales energy, and I'm a little bit more analytical. And so I think we found out early, we learned through working together at another business, that this is a good partnership. And I think you and Jerome have the same type of yin and yang, right? I mean, 100%. Talk a little bit about what's Jerome like. Yeah,
so Jerome's more like the nuts and bolts, the technical, analytical, knows how to build things, even just when he's dreaming or sleeping. So he understands what I would call the technical aspects of the construction.
Yep.
And again, as you morph and get older, I've got my GC license in 15 different states. And so we're a bigger company, right? There's 75 people. So I mean, Beta Bay is definitely not Joe and Jerome. Beta Bay was like an interesting story about Joe and Jerome in the first 5 years. And now there's another at least 5, if not 30 individuals that are contributing at a major level. And you've got role players, you've got people that are in director positions, you've got, responsibilities. And so the way I like to think about it is like, as a company, everybody needs leadership, and some people are better leaders and some people aren't, and some people are better followers and some people, and I'm not even saying that as good or bad, but it's like a role, right? Sure. We're all agreeing to be on a team to do a role. I always like to think, or a greater good or a greater mission, you want to find purpose, you want to find something, you get fired up to go to work together 100%, on, and finding a team or a group of individuals that have a like-minded goal, that's what that can help you get fired up and passionate for the day too. And that's a story of, like, if I go to baseball, right? The Yankees, right? They've got all the money in the world. They've got all the best players. And it's confusing why they don't win the World Series every single year. Right. And the reason why is because they're not always the best team every single year. Right. Or look at Tom Brady. I thought you were going to use a soccer example, PSG, but I guess we can use American sports. I would say baseball and football maybe are a little bit more, relevant, but like, go to Tom Brady, right? If Tom Brady wanted to be be a wide receiver or a running back. My gut tells me like maybe he's on the high school team and we never hear of him again.
Right.
So I guess my point for saying that is like, if you think about Tom Brady, right? He was good at being a leader and being the quarterback. He was not good at any other position. He knows that, right? He might not say that every day,
Sure.
but that's also why he's so appreciative, because he gets a lot of accolades. Like at times I get a lot of accolades and it's like, I don't deserve it.
Yeah.
Right. Tom Brady can't run good plays without the guys running the routes properly, opening up spaces for them.
Well,
So
I think it's a good story too, because you guys really did start as genuine entrepreneurs where, you and Jerome were together at age 23. I mean, at some point you found out that like, hey, we have opposite skills that work well together. And then we're going to talk about building teams, but then you built the team from there and created a machine, a company,
Yep.
But really when you start, it's two guys, you know?
And again, I mean, I think if you go back and say, hey, how did you guys like get to a point that you knew how to build a team and what was your mindset during
Sure.
those times? Part of that is like, you don't know what you're doing at the age of 23. You just don't have experience. And I don't, so I think the question is not like, well, how do I get experience? It's really like, how do you accelerate that learning curve? So and that's what I think about when I think about you, right? It's like, okay, from my age of 23 to 30, let's say that I had a certain mindset at the age of 30, different than I did at 23. Well, how can I compress that? How can I do it quicker? So I think things like executive coaches, mentors, those types of things,
books,
podcast reading,
habits,
being a learner, right?
discipline in the gym.
100%. And we can talk about that if you want to too. So, I mean, I think those are all things that like the consequence of that is that you're growing, you're doing better, and you can then get to goals and initiatives.
Well, I make
quicker.
the argument you've been doing that from day one, because even when you were, I know a little bit more about your story where when you even decided to go to college in San Diego, like you were very intentional about that. I mean, I remember you telling the story about you really deciding to study more, and to try to get the grade that you wanted to. It was very intentional, even on your behalf there. So you intentionally got the degree, intentionally partnered up with Jerome, and I think you didn't know where you were going, but you did always have that growth mindset. How did you get that from such a young age? Because not something you turned on at age 26 or even 23. I think you had it before then, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I grew up playing soccer since the age of 8. And so, we played in England for 3 years when I was over there. So then I came over here, and I was fortunate because soccer came easy to me.
Yeah.
But again, the reason that I bring up soccer in response to what you're saying is that team environment. And so, and then also I think, look, if anybody's a real entrepreneur, meaning that you're going to be successful, right? You have to be vulnerable and you have to be disciplined.
Yeah.
And to me, I think discipline starts a lot first with your body. Because I think it's easier. I think it's easier to be disciplined with your body than it is to be disciplined with your mind. So to me, being disciplined with your mind is a consequence of being disciplined with your body.
Yeah.
And so I can elaborate on that if you want, but
I even think they're the same thing. I think it starts with, you can't even be disciplined with your body unless you're disciplined in your mind, because how do you even get to the gym? You got to like wake up and be like, well, I don't want to go right now. And you got to get yourself to the gym, right?
Yeah.
It starts right there mentally to even get yourself to the physical point.
Well, and I think also, when you control the discipline in your body, that then has energy, you're controlling cortisol, you're managing your dopamine, there's so many good things that come from that from a chemical neurological standpoint, you're now a better person, and you're better able to do your job. You're thinking clearly. Your EQ is very high. Your IQ can come along with it as long as you've put in the work.
Right.
So I mean, it goes back to that old tale of like, people have talent, sports, business, whatever. But I'll take a hard worker, good attitude, good team member over talent any day, because they seem to have more of like I think I'm a living testament of that. I wasn't the smartest kid in the room, right?
Yeah.
But I worked in the top 5% in terms of working hard.
Yeah.
So, going back to college and before, entrepreneurship, I mean, really the way I got through college and I started like that switch clicked for me, maybe at the age of 20 when I was in college, was all I did, like, here's a secret. It's not even a secret. It's like, and people probably don't resonate with it anymore because you don't go to the libraries as much. But all I did in college in San Diego was I didn't want to do homework. Like, I hated going home because it would actually produce anxiety for me.
Yeah.
And I'd procrastinate a few things. And I was like, why am I doing this? So all I did was I took 15 hours of class, right? And I would bolt on an hour of the library before I went to school. So I'd always get there an hour early, and I'd do an hour worth of library work, meaning just and then an hour after. So I was putting in 10 hours a week. So my entire college life experience in San Diego was 25 hours a week, and I never had homework.
Yeah.
And teachers were like getting upset with me because I was turning in reports like 3 months early. But it was just because I had nothing to do and I had to get ahead.
You hacked it.
My point is that like, So that was a discipline.
Yeah.
But the consequence of that was also I had zero anxiety. I didn't worry about homework. I was always ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
And so I think like if we can think through how can we do that in the workplace, or how can young people that are maybe in college do that as well, you actually end up having a better life, and you're managing some of like the anxiety, depression, things that can come from stress in that way. So that was like a little trick I did.
I love that. I think you're identifying, you identified a problem, you created a plan, and then you were disciplined and stuck to it. And then, looking for the outcome. I think it was, I love that story. I think it's so intentional. And I think that's a great example of what, if you're not happy with something in your life right now, what's the process to try to fix that? It's, identify the issue, create the plan around how you can fix the issue, and then, commit to that and act,
100%. So what you just said, right, is kind of, I call it ISEO. Right. And so I'm going to piggyback what you just said. So first you identify the problem. Right. The second thing is you create a strategy for it. The third thing is you execute. So the E is the execute. O is the outcome, and outcomes just happen. Right. So I think a lot of people say like, I want this. Okay. So if you want that, really what you need to do, you got to identify what your hurdles are. You got to come up with a strategy. And then all you do after you're done with the I and the S, the identification of the problem, you put together a strategy. Now the bulk of the work, 90% of the work is in the execution, right? So discipline, following through, doing all those things. And then the outcome is a derivative of that. So,
and can you make it simple? Simple. So your plan is just, you just wake up and execute to a point where it becomes a lighter lift.
100%. So think of like working out, right? I remember when I would go to the gym and I'm like, all right, what am I going to do? Maybe this is a chest and try day or bi and back day, whatever. And so I would go to the gym and I would think through, and I'm like, what exercise am I going to do next? And what am I going to do next? And then, the phone call happened. Like, so now what I've done is that I've got a coach that sends me workouts, and I look at it in the morning and I'm sitting there saying, okay, all I have to do is go on my phone in between sets, and I click the button. I'm done with this. I'm done with this. I'm done. So I'm not thinking. So to me, that's a good example of like, I'm not trying to create a strategy in the moment. All I'm doing is executing, and I'm getting better results because I'm committing. It's easier to commit. I actually complete it at like a 10 out of 10 instead of a 5 out of 10 or some reason that I justify in my head, because I'm human too, right? Like in my brain, I know what the right thing to do is. And so now really what I want to do is I just want to create these little mind things that happen that force me to execute. I'll tell you a Michael Jordan story because he's like one of the guys I just love, right? So if you watch that movie, The Last Dance, or the Netflix series, one of the things that I just thought was like the best part of that entire series was there was a guy that I can't remember the exact thing, but let's say it was like game 6 of one of the championship thing. And I guess Michael Jordan said to the news people afterwards, he's like, so-and-so said something about me, so I'm going to show him that right? He got 50 points like the next game or something like that. And so the guy, I forget the guy's name, but he's like, the other player is like, dude, I didn't say that about Michael Jordan. Like, what are you talking about? So, 30 years later, Michael Jordan's like, yeah, he didn't say it. I just made that shit up in my head. And so my point is like, he literally played his own games in his own head to create motivation, to create discipline that helped him perform. And so what I'm at right now in life is I'm thinking through the neuroscience and how your brain works, and like, how can I potentially make it a game, right? And because it's fun, like that to me is fun. So
we're competitors too that way, growing up in the soccer or sports, we just like, we like competition. I think there's like a little bit of truth behind that. And so I genuinely like competition. So when you can gamify business all of a sudden, also, I think we have a lot of confidence behind the process. I want to mention that. It's like this process of, I think it was much more articulate in your little example of identify the problem, solution to the outcome. But I think that we have confidence in that process because we've done it and we've committed to it for a longer period of time. I know, for soccer, for me specifically, that's where it's easiest for me to tell the story. When I had a weakness, I could identify it, focus on training, and I trained a lot and made that weakness into a strength. And then, moving up the ladder of professional soccer, that was the mentality. It was very competitive. It was, if I see this weakness, if I was bad on my left foot, I could hit 1,000 shots on my left foot and I could see improvement. So that gave me confidence in the process that if I do this, I will actually see a better result. And I think then I had a lot of confidence going into the business world that I just knew that I trusted the process, and that when I brought that same mentality into the business world, all of a sudden I saw results, being committed, discipline. I talk about it with our team a lot. It's just like, I try to do the right thing to the best of my ability each day.
Yeah.
One step at a time. There's that great saying of the I think it's the horse and the fox, the book, where he's like, I can't see my way through the forest. He's like, well, can you see the step right in front of you?
Right.
Well, then take that.
Right.
Yeah. And so I think a lot of confidence in the process, and then we built on that. And then the more you have success and you find success, you get more confident.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I think, when you speak about that, it makes me think of, one of the reasons I think people maybe lack confidence or self-esteem at times is because they didn't get the reps in. And so like, here's an analogy, right? And I'm not trying to say anything bad about Greek, but my example is a Greek restaurant. So I know a couple Greek restaurants that they serve everything. Maybe Applebee's is even a better example, right? Yeah. Like you're serving everything, right? Every food genre you can think of. And so really, do you think of that as like, that's a good restaurant, or that I enjoyed that restaurant for what? So it's like a smorgasbord. You're going to get the best
steak. Are you going to?
You're not going to Applebee's, Fridays, right? You're not going, right. So I think my point in that is I would urge, the listeners that when you're thinking about being an entrepreneur, when you're thinking about doing a business, and one of the things that we've learned, because I've done it the wrong way, I've been in the Greek restaurant where we try to do everything for everyone. And we say, oh, we're in commercial construction. Like, what does that even mean?
Sure.
Like, I could literally look at every building that's not residential and say, we have the ability to build it. True. But am I good at it? Right. Am I adding value? Do I know how to hit a budget? Do I know how to hit a schedule? Do I know how to help my client achieve what their goals are? And the truth is, the answer is no. Like, I can't. Because I can't be good at everything. We kind of said that in the beginning.
Yeah.
So I think in general, we gotta, as entrepreneurs, and in business owners, you gotta think through what can you become good at, and then you gotta be an expert at it. So the reason your confidence level goes up, you just gave the story, because you use your left foot 1,000 times. Well, if you only use it 10, it's still not good. If you did it 1,000 times, so you became an expert through reps. And I think the same thing applies in business, is that we need to become experts at certain disciplines, at certain things, and then that builds confidence.
Yeah.
So then when I have a conversation, like at Bay to Bay, we focus on self-storage, fuel stations, car washes, and multi-tenant retail. We have a stretch that I won't talk about right now, but that's our core business.
Yep.
So when someone asks me, can you do a Starbucks? Yeah, I built 15 of them. But right now, that's not my core competency. I don't think I'm an expert at it right now. So I'd rather give it to somebody else.
Yeah.
In the future, it might change and I'll go focus on being an expert. But if you want to talk to me about car wash, self-storage, or gas stations, I can talk for days and I can add a ton of value.
Yeah.
And the recipient, the client, feels that, sees that, appreciates that. And I think that that's like a little bit of a secret as well. I see a lot of entrepreneurs or young businesses, they can't really define what they're really good at. And they kind of are like, let's take real estate. If you're a broker.
Sure.
Oh yeah, we do everything. Man, really? Like, you literally do everything? So you're telling me that you're going to be as good of a broker of selling a Publix that I have in Tallahassee as you are going to sell a multifamily structure down in Clearwater?
Right.
I don't believe that. If I ask that question, it's like, sounds silly. Oh, well, no. Okay, so you don't do everything.
Yeah.
You're really good at this and that. Like, get good at it.
It takes some time to probably find that too in the journey. Like, I mean, you started building houses. You had a journey that led you to the right product, right? And so maybe you could talk about that a little bit. Like, because there is a period in your life where you have to try things, right? It's when you're looking to find what are you good at.
I think that's a fair comment.
You have a great awareness and you're very intentional.
And so remember, I'm 43 years old. I have the luxury of 20 years looking back. And so like practicing what I preach is easier now than it was then.
Sure.
So to your point, I just admitted we were the Greek restaurant. We were trying to do everything.
Yeah.
When you throw a bunch of crap at the wall, right? You don't know which ones you can make good margin on, hit good schedule. Are you being fair to the team? I'm a big utilitarian guy. So what the most good for the most amount of people is that principle.
Yeah.
I don't think it's fair for me to tell a project manager that, they're going to do a Starbucks one day, a church the next day, a bridge the next day. Like that's inconsistent, and they can't have that.
You can't get better at what they're doing.
They can't get better too. So I would fully agree with you. I'm not trying to, I'm saying we should ask that question.
No, I think you're 100% right. That's the goal, right? So now the process to get there, I think like you did a really good job of trying different things. You were in different areas. You were very meticulous at measuring your success rate in, each venture. And then you were very clear in identifying that you were looking. I mean, are you in it for the passion of building Starbucks? Do you love building Starbucks so much? It was like, it's more of like we're in a profit. I mean, I can say DKC Lending, we're in a profit business.
Right.
I do love giving loans out to borrowers. We love making borrowers' dreams come true and helping them get the deal that they needed, or helping them access equity to, to get to a goal.
Yep.
We love that. But we are a for-profit business,
Yep.
right? And we're gonna also focus on our margins. So I think you did a really good job of you tried a lot of different things. You measured along the way, and then you made adjustments and pivoted, right?
So I when you say that, I would agree fully with that. I think we got to think about capacity, right? So like, at Beta Bay right now, we have the capacity to build roughly 50 projects a year. So what I have to do is, like you just said, is we have to analyze, all right, if I've got 150 projects to choose from, what are the 50 that are the best margin, the most consistent, that are sustainable, scalable, and they meet all we call our VTO, which is the EOS model of how to build businesses. But that's what we're doing to try to like live up to the VTO, the vision tracker organizer that we have.
How did you identify what that is? Like, I mean,
again, part of it is trying, so I have the luxury of looking back at 200 projects and I could like start analyzing which ones are the right ones, which ones are we good at, which ones can we be expert. And then again, I mean, it's like my father very well. And, I remember my dad saying one time, hey, you're more successful and you're more happy in life. You can make more money the more you say no rather than yes.
Yeah.
And it's hard to say that to a young entrepreneur that tries to, because they fear of missing out and should I, all those questions. So I'm not necessarily trying to say, don't have the experience of the Greek restaurant and don't try everything. I am saying, ask the right question and try to refine and try to potentially hone in on something that you can get really good at. And I've seen more success. I think if you look at big companies, you'll see they do that as well.
Yeah.
And then also just get the right team members.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden it's fun. So like, I don't necessarily run around saying I love construction. That's a vehicle for my team. Right. What I do love is I love interacting with people. I love providing value to clients. I know a lot about construction and development now. So that's like people want that data from me, because what I'm able to do is I'm able to mitigate their risk so that they can monetize their asset easier and quicker compared to the rest of the marketplace. And so for me, that's like, I gotta put myself in their shoes and why am I valuable to them and keep perpetuating that value. Yeah. But that value proposition comes from the experience of, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that, I am good at this, I am good at that. Okay, how do we sell it? How do we talk about it? So that's
you weren't afraid to try things, and then you were meticulous about evaluating the success along the way, and then making clear decisions.
100%. I mean, we got to fail, right? If you don't fail, you're not pushing the envelope. I mean, I've got two boys that are 10 and 12 years old, and what I'm trying to talk to them a lot about is try, fail. Yeah. Let's talk about the failures. Why did you fail? Was it fun? Did it feel good? Why didn't it feel good? What are you thinking here? What did you do good in that? And so those are the conversations we're having. Because again, I mean, the truth is you're going to fail a lot more than you
facing conflict head on and not being afraid of it, and that's getting comfortable with failure. And to your point.
Yep.
I love that.
Michael Jordan, like he'll say again, this will be my last Michael Jordan quote, but something along the lines of, I was tasked with taking, I'm kind of making up because I can't remember exactly, but 50 last minute game winning shots. Yeah. And I only made 12 of them or something like that. Right. So it's like,
there's only 12 you remember.
Yeah.
Right?
I had like a 75% failure rate. Yeah. Right. And it's like, does anybody think Michael Jordan's a failure? The dude literally fails way more than he wants, and he admits it. And so I think once you become comfortable with that and can say it out loud, it's almost like freeing, because then you're not embarrassed. You're not, right? It's just
so good. I think a little like life is temperance too, right? For like, I'm big into the Stoics right now, but life is like temperance, because it's like, I say we're for profit, but you also don't want to be going and working in some industry that you absolutely hate because you're making a lot of money. I mean, I think it's a lot about you want to find something you actually enjoy, and then you want to try to find the profit margins that match up with that. So we're not saying to go do something you hate to make money. I think that's really important. We actually genuinely we like real estate. We think it's very interesting. We're finance guys. We actually enjoy numbers and spreadsheets. I know you can relate to that. But, I find joy in that, and then helping people, like real people on the other side of these transactions. Yeah. And so when you can find an industry you really like that is profitable also, and then you can do it with a team that you enjoy being around, and like I think that for me personally has been the key to finding happiness.
Well, and money's a derivative of a good strategy and excellent execution. Right. It just happens, right? And then also, if you're making a little bit of money, it's because you're providing a lot of value to your clients. So they want to engage with you. So it just becomes this perpetual, right? Like circle or cycle. And then I would just say, well, what are you doing with that money? And I think we all owe it to ourselves to just say, like, if you get money, or if an entrepreneur gets money, what are you doing? And I would argue, like, I want money because I want choices, right? Okay, so now that I have choices, I'm hoping that I can maybe make the world better. I can talk, I can share those. I can do certain things. I can make decisions. I can create environments. I can be a leader and perpetuate things, because capital moves needles.
Absolutely.
It's very, very difficult. And there's some stories, and someone could argue with me back, and I would probably agree with them. But there's not that many things that I've seen in life that can really move the needle in the right direction when you don't have capital.
Yeah.
I've sat on boards of not-for-profits, and I can tell you straight up, they need capital.
Yeah.
They need capital to be able to help. Right.
Yeah.
And so I do think that that's just a component of how the United States of America and the world works right now. So we just need to acknowledge that and then try to be good stewards.
And then I also know that you agree with the sentiment that, money won't make you happy either. You won't find peace in money, I raise a lot of capital from high net worth individuals, and, there is no riding off into the sunset and drinking margaritas on the beach for 30 years. There's nobody that's really happy with that. I know a lot of these high performance guys that we raise capital from, they love the game. Back to gamify. They love playing a game. They got to be in the space of, I want to invest in something. They look at that and they look at their investments like a game. I still own a business. I look at that like a game. Even though they might have children and they're very, into their family life and trying to, have the best family life possible and get their children to the future that they see for them. And it's like they gamify, how can I get my kid into that school, and I want him to go to that college. I want to, he wants to be good at this sport. How can I help him be good at soccer?
Yeah.
We talked with Gavin about doing 100 juggles. It's like, and I can see that even it's fun to try to help Gavin get to the next step in his career as a 14-year-old. Right.
So there's my good friend, Kevin Melker, he was having a couple conversations with me recently, and I'm going to butcher the name of the Greek kind of parable in this. I think it's a Sisyphus or something like that. But anyways, the parable goes that, you've got a guy that is destined to push a rock up a hill, right? But it's a triangular hill, like a mountain, think of it. So he pushes. The second he reaches the goal at the top, it falls down on the bottom. Now he has to go down to the bottom and push, and then falls down to the bottom. So, that's an example or a metaphor for, if your goal is to get it to the top, it's going to immediately fall.
Right.
I mean, I heard something recently. I can't remember if Kevin told me or somewhere else that, literally 95% of the players that win a Super Bowl, the next morning they're clinically depressed.
Yeah.
And that's interesting, right? Because you
Olympic
reach the
athletes
pinnacle
too, like gold medal athletes. It's the same stat.
We've got Michael Phelps stories. There's lots of stories that you can kind of research on that. So what's the message there? And I think the message, I know what the message is, at least for me, is that we need to be able to find success enjoying the journey, not the outcome. So Gavin is my son. We talked about juggling, right? And you were trying to give him some advice on how to become a better soccer player.
Sure.
If all Gavin cares about is making a team, right? He's either going to make the team or not, and that's going to feel good or it's not. But if he actually finds joy in trying hard to make the team, and I'm going to put the discipline, I'm going to get to the 100 juggles, I'm going to do it. Now all of a sudden you just had, 6 months of joy.
Right.
And then if you make it and if you fail, okay, why did I fail? I'm going to pivot and do something else. So I'm trying really hard right now to continue to stress not focusing on the outcome and focusing more on the journey. And then where I'm at in my own kind of like learning life mentality mindset is I'm realizing that what that is it's all controlling your dopamine. And so, again, what Kevin has kind of educated me on recently, and I'm a big, Andrew Huberman guy the neuroscience and that kind of thing, is that when you're dealing with dopamine, when you win the Super Bowl, right, you have a big dopamine dump.
Yeah.
And so what happens is your baseline dopamine ends up going really low. And then now all of a sudden you got to build it back up to baseline. So what I'm trying to do is like drip my dopamine, and there's ways to do it. I won't get into it because I'm not even, I don't think I can articulate it properly to be accurate. But I would urge people to like research that, because our dopamine baseline of it constantly staying at a good level, not going up and down, actually can create a lot more what I'll call long-term happiness, sustainable happiness, as opposed to I got this outcome because I work really hard. Now I actually have a dump and it's not fulfilling. Like, have you ever met anybody that actually like met a goal and then is like, I don't care about any other goal for the rest of my life? Like, or like the whole mentality of like, oh, I can't wait to retire because I'm going to go to an island. Like, I don't even understand what that means.
No.
Right. And so like, for me, it's like, once you hit it, now it might not be a monetary goal and then another monetary goal, but it's probably, maybe it's a monetary goal and then it's another goal. So like you always need goals. I would argue if you don't have goals, you're kind of like just walking.
You're stagnant.
Dead.
Yeah.
And that's super unfulfilling.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I think that, having those clear goals and they can continue to move. I mean, the triathlete marathon mentality is very, very similar. As you're saying that, I'm like, yeah, that's basically the mentality when you have an event, because like at first, when I first started running marathon and doing triathlon, I would, train. I'd train for 6 months, didn't miss one run. And then almost you find yourself falling into the mindset of, I can't wait until that marathon's done. And when you're running it, you're like, oh, I'm never doing this again. When you're running, you're like, I can't wait for this to be over so I can take a month off, But then as I've gotten further into that journey, it's like, there is no time off. There is no down season. You stay fit 100% of the time. And, the triathlon training and stuff, I enjoy it, but it's the discipline, what it makes of me that I really love,
And again, I would say, you were touching a little bit, and I'm a big believer in being intentional, right? And we go back to the ISEO. You identify the problem, you're coming up with a strategy. So part of like the marathon or, whatever we want to talk about from like working out or, it's not, you said 100% fit. I agree with you. Yeah. But when you're 365 days, does not mean you work out 365 days, right? Not at all. Yeah. You have to acknowledge how your body, recovery, sleep, all of these things that matter. And so once they become a priority, right? Like I talk to guys all the time. They're like, oh, I don't have time to work out. You can't say that. You have to say like, working out is not a priority because I see you doing other things that are a priority. Well, work's more important than work. Like I get it, but like if you're like out of shape and you don't have energy and you can fatigue quickly, like is that like I could make an argument I can work 40 hours a week better than I can work 60 as long as I'm doing a few other things that 100%. Help perpetuate that. So it's definitely more like quality over quantity.
I believe you won't achieve your highest like state of happiness. We can use the word happiness. It might be joy or peace, whatever it is. But I think you genuinely can't achieve it if you're not healthy.
Yeah.
And the healthy can mean like whether you want to be a marathon or a triathlete, like that's neither here nor there. Healthy.
Yeah.
Like you got to be able to walk up the stairs. Do you want to live long enough to see your grandchildren? And, they talk about walking your daughter down the aisle.
Yeah. I read an article recently that they said 99% of billionaires would give up 99% of their money to become 25 years old again.
Right.
And I think that's
a great example
because it's your health and it's everything. So, and again, and when you watch, some Tony Robbins stuff, he's got that new book out. I think it's called New Life or STEM Life or something. It's all about stem cells and, how to be better and, hormones and peptides. And so that's out there right now. I think that'll start becoming a little more mainstream, but everybody's searching for how do I stop aging so I can be in the game, and again, my dad's a good example of that. I think, he does a lot of marathons. He's trying really, he's educating himself. I mean, he's almost 70 years old, still getting his PhD.
Yep.
And all he wants to do is hang out with guys like me and you and get better. Right. So like, that's a good example of someone that's keeping himself young, trying to like engage in the game that we're in. Yeah. Right. Meaning just in general.
Yeah.
And I think that most of us want to do that. I did have something happened to me when I was really young that was helpful. I said this on another podcast, but basically what happened was I was surfing for 3 months in a row in Australia. It was awesome, right? Yeah. And I remember one day I was just like, my brother was on the bottom bunk, I was on the top bunk of this hostel, and I just started like getting teary-eyed, like literally emotional at nighttime for I didn't even really understand why. So my brother's like, "Are you okay?" His name's Tommy. So Tommy's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I just don't feel good, man." And but it wasn't like a physical thing; it was like a mental thing.
Yeah.
And the truth is, what happened was that I felt like my brain was going to mush. I was not being stimulated by anything intellectually. I was just surfing my butt off, and it was unfulfilling. So that was a very good example at a young age. That's why, like, I do want to go on a boat. I do want to hang out on islands. I do want to surf. But I'm not going to do that for a year at a time. I need to have that balance of like that intellectual stimulation. I think we've all heard stories of, people that retire. They don't really find another hobby or something to do. They either die or they're unfulfilled or they're depressed or they start having all these clinical issues, at the age of 75, when it's like, hold on, this is what you live for. You didn't adjust and create new hobbies and all that. Exactly. So I think we need to keep that in the back of our mind too.
Your dad is a great example. I know he'll be listening to this one too. He's a great example of that. He keeps us motivated as the young guy. I know he likes to hang out with the young guys, but we look at him and we're like, that keeps us going on the other side where you're like, look at him still pushing, it is aspirational to say like, wow, there's levels to this. And I think he's so intentional on his purpose. Yeah. And that's what's so great to see. He's not necessarily, he's dialed into his purpose as far as he wants to help other people and how can he do that to a higher level and impact more people. And he knows to do that, he needs to be at his best.
Yep.
You know, that's why he's going to keep training his mind, his body. And it is, you know, it all goes together. That's why, you know, you and I talk about, we're cold tubbing, we're hot, a sauna. We do the sauna a lot, you know. We're in the gym 5-6 days a week. And to your point, even if we're working out 7 days a week, we have one day where I'll just walk the dogs 3 times. You know, it's a recovery day. But I think just staying active in the mind, body, soul, it all ties into finding.
And I would also piggyback on that, and we can transition, is that like I really think from a health standpoint, you know, we got to care about nutrition, right?
Yeah.
I just, you know, there's a lot of food out there, and my wife is I'm fortunate because she's, you know, to me, she's on the cutting edge.
She's got to be a researcher.
Well, she reads all these books, you know, feeding me lies and feeding you lies, and just like the way that the dyes in the food, and just, you know, the carbohydrates that are bad, the processed foods. So I do think, you know, and I'm fortunate to have her, because it's like my cupboard is just filled with good options. So even in a weak moment, I'm grabbing something that's probably not that bad. Yeah. But that nutrition, right? My point is that nutrition fuels everything we're talking about, right? Because that's your energy,
high performance,
and then it also parlays in the work. So again, if there's a 25, I really don't care what their age is. If there's an entrepreneur that comes to me and says, what are the things that I should do? I would talk about the ISEO. Yep. I would talk about the body. I would talk about nutrition. I would talk about minimizing alcohol and those types of things in order to be at your best. And then the last part would be, what does your team look like? What are you not good at? Write down, tell me what you're not good at, and tell me what your strategy is to go fill those voids. Because we all know that 90 or 80% of businesses fail after 3 years. Right. So how do you get past that 3-year point? And most businesses that I've seen, they have good partners, they have good team members. They're able to kind of plow through that 3-year point. And then it's about sustainability. Then you need to evolve, look at your marketplace, those kind of things. Yeah. I think that's like the foundation.
Thanks for joining us today. If you want to learn more about how to make money with hard money, like, subscribe, and follow us at dkclending.com.